Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and I know it's been a little bit of a while and all that since we last talked about Daniel Larson, but basically, to put a little bit of a bow, well, a cherry on this cake, we decided that, well, we may as well just talk about, like, the entire chronology of Daniel Larson's eras as they were, because, well, since we probably won't be seeing Daniel Larson probably ever again, or at least until 65 years is what Daniel Larson could be facing in prison. I will be 91 by the time he comes out. Well, providing that, again, Daniel Larson... I don't think Daniel Larson will reach 65 years. I have no idea, but, well, let's basically do where this all began. So, first of all, special message. This article is undergoing major edits to fix issues within. As a courtesy, please coordinate your edits by looking at your edit history and talking to other editors in the Wiki Discord. Remember that doxing is both illegal and immoral. Phone numbers, home addresses, and confidential information should be omitted from this page. The subject of or contents of Daniel Larson are potentially offensive and or controversial. Viewer discretion is advised. Daniel Larson may have non-archive videos on the page. While they will not be removed from this page, they may be removed from the host website and make the video inaccessible. Please help us out by archiving videos on archive.org. And finally, Daniel Larson has been deemed to be an unreliable narrator, reason given, compulsive lying, delusional. Bear this in mind and think before taking their statements at face value. Now, with all that being out of the way, let's get started. Hello, this is Daniel Larson. Daniel in almost all of his videos. He likes himself now. He feels good about himself. I'm not saying he's a finished job. He's got more work to do, but he's a much different child than he was when he first came here. Daniel's grandmother regarding Daniel while he was attending the Tennyson Center. Daniel Robert Larson, born November 15, 1998, also known as Danderson, Mr. President, or Zuma Chris Chan, is a 25-year-old mentally ill online internet personality, self-identified singer/songwriter, and fashion model, convicted criminal, President of the United States, and celebrity who's engaged to former America's Got Talent star Grace Vanderwaal, despite them having never met in person. In 2020, Daniel gained a sizable following due to his strange content and unusual appearance. Upon discovery, people began to troll him for amusement, due to him resembling controversial internet personalities such as Chris Chan or Terry A. Davis. In an attempt to get Daniel to notice them, individuals often pretended to be teams of managers who stroked his delusions of fame and fortune. Daniel fell for this hook, line, and sinker. This would eventually turn Daniel from a well-meaning, albeit odd person into someone with genuine problems, who regularly broke the law and posted deranged content. Daniel would consider himself a celebrity, specifically a world-famous musician, despite him not selling a multi-platinum album, and the glaring fact that he is a homeless vagrant. Despite this, he is the creator of the smash hit songs Roaring Thunder and Something More, as well as being the mind behind several violent and or disturbing meltdowns and incidents, making him, if anything, more infamous than famous. The primary reason behind his behavior is attributed to Daniel's several mental disorders, and his unwillingness to receive help for them. The specific disorders are not known, although Daniel is confirmed to have autism, as well as bipolar disorder, PTSD, and most notably, schizophrenia. Confirmation of any medical diagnosis is unclear, but he has resided in a specialized education environment for children with diverse needs, as well as a disability housing, which suggests some professional assessment. Daniel's content is regularly hosted on his many TikTok and YouTube accounts, which he is widely banned off, as well as many real-world locations. This is due to behavior such as him exposing his genitals on a live stream, his P-word tendencies, use of racial slurs, and assaulting multiple people in real life, most notably his elderly mentor. From 2024-1 onwards, Daniel's life would continue in a downward spiral as he'd move from house to house before eventually becoming homeless, contracting scabies, proclaiming himself to be in a relationship with Grace Vandervool, being exposed multiple times for his P-word behaviour, hopping from manager to manager, adopting a dog, defrauding a taxi driver, assaulting a bodega employee, attempting to enroll in college twice, pulling a fire alarm at an Olive Garden, facing multiple arrests, making several terroristic threats against the government, and eventually being charged for it, and becoming significantly more mentally ill than when he first started posting onto the internet. There was truly been no internet personality such as Daniel Larson, with his story being described as many as same shit different day. Even after years of people trying to help him, Daniel shows no signs of stopping his incredibly dangerous behaviour, choosing to only live in his handcrafted, delusional world. It had even gotten so bad to a point where police intervention was required to get him to cease his activities, where Daniel may stay forever. In short, Daniel's story is one that is not fated to have a happy ending, leaving his life as a tale of bad parenting, the effects of untreated mental illness, gullibility, narcissism, sexual deviancy, criminal activity, and most importantly, a tale of the world watching a man deteriorate through each and every day. So, that's the large background knowledge, and this is the before era. This is specifically what would, because there's at least 11 major arcs to Daniel Larson's story, and this is, well, the first of them. So, here we go. Before era. Childhood and adolescence. Daniel has never been officially confirmed to have been abused as a child, much less sexually. News articles, videos, and posts often state that he has without a source. However, when these posts do have sources, they are almost always from Daniel, who is known to be extremely untrustworthy. On the other hand, it is very likely that Daniel himself was the abuser. While it is likely he may have been abused, please take any claims made by him with a grain of salt until further confirmation. Daniel Robert Larson was born on November 15, 1998, in Lancaster, California, to parents Elizabeth Lee Schimmer and James Travis Larson. His parents were fairly young when they gave birth to him. While Elizabeth's age is not known, his father was only 20 at the time of his son's birth. Daniel's genesis could have been spurred by claims of his father being obsessed with sex, though this cannot be confirmed. In 2001, Daniel's mother would also give birth to late siblings, Joyetta and Olivia, who would pass away due to RH incompatibility not long after birth. Observing Daniel's facial features, including a thin, flat upper lip and small eye openings, there is speculation about the possibility of him having fetal alcohol syndrome. However, this cannot be proven. And furthermore, Elizabeth's impaired state adds complexity to the situation. When Daniel was a toddler, he was said to have been playmates with his neighbor's dog. In one of his TikToks, Daniel indicates that he murdered this dog. As he chased the dog around, it jumped over a spiked fence to which it impaled itself due to not being able to jump over in time. While Daniel obviously was not the one who killed this animal, this small anecdote was most likely the starting point of his violent tendencies. In 2010, Daniel was relocated to Colorado at the age of 11 by his mother following her separation from his father, who viewed Daniel as a lost cause. The decision to move was also influenced by Colorado's reputedly better mental and physical health support opposed to California's. This was due to Daniel's severe mental health problems, which were starting to bud as the years passed. This was also due to Elizabeth becoming wheelchair-bound after years of fighting lupus. As confirmed by his mother, Daniel, even from a young age, displayed severe signs of disabilities, such as autism, bipolar disorder, and schizophrenia. Though I personally would like to point out that autism is not a disability necessarily, but the severity of his autism can, in many cases, be viewed as a disability, if not for other diagnoses. Although this might be in conjuncture with other diagnoses. But this is purely based on a case-by-case basis. And maybe this is more than true for the case of Daniel, but that's just maybe how it is. This may be because his mother, as well as his father, may be mentally challenged to some extent. It is unclear what condition they suffer from. I'm Danny's mom, and yes, we have moved here for the services. He doesn't just have autism, he has severe bipolar and schizophrenic. He has beaten me and my mom, he has lied and has fantasies about so many things. He does not want to listen to authority. He is not famous, but wants to believe he is. He does what he wants, and if you don't let him, he gets violent. If you want more information, contact me. One would believe Daniel to be a normal child, but even at a young age, he was noted as being extremely violent with his mother. As well as having fantasies, this would be a sign of things to come. More of young Daniel. And we can see here getting electric guitar on his 13th birthday, a karate master, just photos of him around his mother, and from youth to growing up. And Daniel's childhood was wrought with tenuous claims of neglect and alleged sexual abuse, which, if true, may have left him with childhood trauma, which exasperated his already chaotic behaviour, as well as contributing to his later P-word tendencies. A worker, who is said to have helped him during childhood, went on to say Daniel had a history of child sexual abuse to him and by him, although what this means is unknown. It has not been confirmed if this person actually helped Daniel, leaving its validity up in the air. I worked with this person when he was a child/teen in a severe treatment center in Denver. He's had a horrible upbringing and does suffer from multiple behavior and personality issues. This is a man with deep-rooted mental health problems. It's very sad, and I hope that the dog and himself finds help. There's a history of child sexual abuse to him and by him as well. How he acts isn't a game or him faking, it's truly how his brain thinks, and it's severely debilitated. Very sad story to see from this working with him as a teen. However, claims of Daniel being neglected is confirmed by multiple people, even by his own classmates. Additionally, Daniel's father allegedly forced him to smoke cigarettes as punishment. DDRC describing Daniel to potential foster parents. Daniel has lived in a few different host homes in the past few years and has a history of property damage, kicking animals, self-injurious behavior, and verbally threatening or hitting providers when he's upset. Daniel has a friend/mentor, Bob, who supports Daniel in his free time. Daniel often needs reminders not to take advantage of this relationship and to respect Bob's time and resources. This is evidenced by the fact that at about 11, Daniel was taken away from his mother by the state of Colorado due to being neglected and facing alleged abuse, which Daniel and a later news report reaffirm. Due to this, Daniel claims that he bounced between 10 to 15 foster homes. This is also evidenced by leaked documents that the DDRC sent to potential fosters, families/host homes. These documents warn families that Daniel has a history of property damage, kicking animals, self-injurious behavior, and verbally threatening or hitting providers when he's upset, which corroborates claims of him being extremely violent even in childhood. Elizabeth has claimed that Nancy, her adopted mother, as well as Daniel's grandmother, spread lies about her abusing her son. But the validity of these claims has not yet to be substantiated. However, it is extremely likely that Elizabeth was unable to take care of Daniel due to being disabled and functioning solely in a wheelchair. Difficulty, only added by the separation of her and his father, as well as difficulty from Daniel, Because of her disability, Elizabeth went into assisted living in 2015 when Daniel was around 16 to 17, according to Flexberger, a person who would later make contact with him. Daniel moved to Hugo, Colorado with his mother after she split with Travis. She couldn't take care of him anymore because she was paralyzed, and Daniel was an asshole. I asked him about her getting paralyzed. He told me she was stuck on the kitchen floor for a couple of months straight by herself and couldn't get up. I knew that was a lie, so I asked, so she shat and pissed herself on the floor for a couple of months straight, to which Daniel responded, yes. Daniel was placed into several foster homes before his grandmother, Nancy Schimmer, took legal guardianship of him. Despite her kinder treatment of Daniel, Nancy was known to be enabling of his bad habits. According to both of Daniel's parents, it is claimed that at the tender age of 3, Nancy rewarded Daniel with M&Ms after he painted on her house's walls opposed to punishing him. Due to this enabling, Elizabeth and Travis attempted to gain respective custody of their son, before ultimately failing. When Travis attempted to file for custody of Daniel, Nancy refuted it by saying that Daniel didn't even know his father, which heavily calls into question what their relationship was like. Because of this, Travis grew to have an extreme dislike of Nancy, allegedly calling her a bitch, as well as claiming the only reason she had obtained custody of Daniel was due to her greater financial situation. Though, unlike his father, Elizabeth was eventually given visitation rights to see Daniel. Daniel would attend the Tennyson Center for Children, an assisted living facility for schooling, rehabilitating and assisting children with intellectual disabilities and children who face neglect, abuse and other mistreatments. At this school, he met his mentor Bob Proctor via a reading buddy program wherein they played ball games and read together. Even after the program concluded, Daniel and Bob still remain close. Daniel even made it on the news, evidenced by a 2012 news report on KWGN, which, while not entirely focused on Daniel, it would document his time at the Tennyson Center, where he lived for 1.5 years, prior to Nancy gaining custody of him, as well as an interview with his grandmother. I need to blow my nose, so enjoy this clip.
So wonderful!
The Tennyson Center for Children has become one of the Rocky Mountain region's leading treatment centers for emotionally and crisis-affected children, particularly those suffering from abuse and neglect.
Good boy.
When I first came here, I actually was really nervous.
That's 14-year-old Danny, who came from an extremely neglectful home. When his grandmother got word of Danny's situation, she moved here from California to be his guardian,
Wonderful!
so he wouldn't end up in a foster home. Danny still lived at the center for 1.5 years, but now lives with his grandma, continuing to go to school at Tennyson and receive treatment.
When he came to Tennyson almost 3 years ago, he was very angry and confused and feeling very uncertain about his life and where he belonged and what was going to happen.
Rod Witt, the president of Tennyson Center, says the program gives children like Danny great opportunity.
Do they bring some challenges? Absolutely, they do. But, they've got the opportunity to, number one, be safe. Number two, receive some attention that they've, in some cases, never received. And number three, to get help and to be themselves and to really let their own personalities come forth.
But looking at Danny now, you will see a smiling, laughing young boy with the world ahead of him.
This is wonderful today!
Danny and his grandmother have both seen huge improvements.
I learned to, when I'm in school, to do school and never quit, because if you quit, you won't know what to do. And if someone's trying to get you upset, don't let them make you feel bad about yourself. Just be good and make yourself feel happy.
He likes himself now. He feels good about himself. I'm not saying he's a finished job. He's got more work to do, but he's a much different child than he was when he first came here.
Danny now has big dreams and is looking forward to the future.
I like theater. I love to act. I want a storm chase when I get older. Hopefully I'll be on the news one day.
As Danny says goodbye, he has this to say to the people at the Tennyson Center.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure being here. And they did a lot to help me. I made lots of friends. I learned how to do stuff I never knew how to do before. And it's much better now. Thank you.
During his childhood, Daniel was almost exclusively referred to as Danny. He was even called this in his school's yearbook, and in a news report he was featured in. According to his classmates, Daniel was a very violent person. Even in class, one of his classmates remarks at a time wherein Daniel threw a chair at a window, which resulted in a light fixture being knocked down. I also remember he threw a chair at the window in the computer lab that overlooked the library and knocked down one of the light fixtures. But yeah, that sums it up, lol. And according to this same classmate, Daniel had a habit of running in the hallway in an attempt to evade staff. Due to this behaviour, Daniel was given a guardian that followed him around throughout the school day due to him no longer being trusted alone. Daniel claims that this was not because he was unable to be trusted, but instead he was followed due to the positive relationship he had with his teachers. Considering Daniel's penchant of habitual lying, this is most likely a lie. Just like his childhood, his time in school was wrought with alleged claims of mistreatment and bullying. Daniel claims that the Tennyson Center was a very violent place. According to Daniel, the Tennyson Center had a brick room only lit up by a single window dubbed the timeout room, wherein they'd placed Daniel on several occasions. His reasoning for being thrown in these rooms for reasons such as excessive crying and not cooperating with teachers, other students would be physically restrained due to being violent. However, this seems to have never happened to Daniel. When in school, Daniel claimed that children would tease him by calling him Danny Phantom, a nickname derived from the fictional character of the same name. Though this seems very unlikely, as according to a classmate, Daniel barely reacted to being called this nickname, and even more, he was so reserved that people barely ever paid attention to him. Contrary to what most people say, people were actually quite respectful towards him. We all know we all knew we had our own issues, but for the most part, nobody meant any harm towards him. Whenever he was called Danny Phantom, there was no malicious intent. He didn't even really react to it. I guess that's more something that came after he graduated. But no, not really anybody bullied him. This particular school was quite small, so when I say that, not really anybody bullied him. I mean, there were about 18 of us in high school. Even the biggest bully in the school didn't really pay much attention to him. He was just that reserved. According to his LinkedIn page, Daniel was a volunteer dog walker in the Humane Society of Boulder Valley in January 2012, although there is not much information about this. Sometime in 2014, Daniel started attending several musical theatre programs. It is unknown who set him up for these programs, but it can be inferred that his grandmother was the one who introduced him to it. Daniel's mother could have also introduced him to it, as she is documented to have liked to sing, evidenced by the multiple song covers she has made, just as Daniel would later in his life. Daniel is known to have played in at least 8 musicals, although very rarely getting lead roles. The only time in which he did this was in King Triton in The Little Mermaid Jr. This would set the groundwork for his desire to be famous. Okay, so after a very quick little timeout, for what they're worth, this is Daniel Larson's 2014 musical audition. Interestingly, I think the idea is that Daniel wanted to be like the center of it, like the person that absolutely was spotted out, as opposed to maybe his poor timing. In many of the photos from his time in musical theatre, Daniel was visibly smaller than almost all of his classmates. Only exasperated by his odd bowl-cut hairstyle, it can be assumed that Daniel has some sort of physical disability that causes him to look like this, but this cannot be substantiated. Daniel would later start attending Sobsuki Academy in 2016. The year it opened, it should be noted that Sobsuki, while having a large population of children with special needs and behavior issues, was not a special needs only school. This was due to Sobsuki being an alternative transitional school, which aimed to rehabilitate troubled students and help them sort through their issues to attain academic success. Due to him never being reintegrated, there are questions surrounding the validity of this high school diploma. Daniel's time at Sobsuki is mostly unknown, as Daniel seemingly hasn't talked much about his high school years, as opposed to his time in the Tennyson Center, which he seems to hold in higher regard. Though, according to one of his high school classmates, Daniel, even in high school, had an escort, which implies that Daniel had violent tendencies even then. He seemed pretty normal. He really had some issues with academic retention, and he was very reserved. He oftentimes would have an escort, and his escorts would call him Danny. Post-graduation, it was like night and day. He went from robotic to the way he is today. It was a rapid turnaround. Despite being reserved, he would occasionally hit himself and have meltdowns, which would result in him being put in close and lock, much akin to the punishment room. The reasons why he is so much worse now compared to his time in school could be due to Daniel being heavily medicated when he attended Sobsuki and Tennyson, opposed to nowadays where he almost always refuses to be put on antipsychotics. He was often described as someone who was quiet, a total wallflower, and pretty normal. There was some hitting himself on occasion. That's what would trigger the close and lock, but he was nothing like how he is now at the time. Despite being unable to do basic math to a point sorry about that. To a point where a classmate described him having an academic retention, took math up to Algebra 2. He was 4 years older than me, so having classes was rare. The only one I had with him was back in 2017, when I was taking Algebra 2. It is unknown what Daniel did most of high school career, but it is known to have acted as one of the mascots for his school's softball team. Daniel was said to have been obsessed with singing even during high school. However, there were no mentions of Grace Vandervoort. Despite this, sometime when Daniel was around 17, him and his grandmother were watching America's Got Talent. It is said that when Daniel was watching it with her, his grandmother remarked that he may sing with her on stage someday. Despite the questionable validity of this statement, Daniel convinced himself, even though at the time Grace was 12 and he was closer and closer to becoming 18, that he was a part of Grace's life. This was the birth of his obsession with her. Much to everyone's surprise, Daniel was still attending high school, was arrested after an instance in which he was physically assaulting his own mother, who was at that point was fully paralyzed and unable to walk. He claims that this situation was aggravated after she had cornered him, but when looking at his charges, there is much doubt to be had in his story. Due to this, he was imprisoned for 44 to 45 days, delaying his graduation from Sobsuki. Due to this incident, it would almost instantly ruin him and his mother's relationship, considering that as of now, Elizabeth wants absolutely no contact with her own son. Daniel would graduate from Sobsuki Academy at the age of 19 in 2017. After this, he never attended college or a university. It can be inferred that he continued to live with his grandmother after this. And from this point onwards is when this is sort of the ending for now as far as his early years are concerned. So this was the ending of the before era. And well, good lord, how do we even come to a conclusion on something like this? trauma, abuse, violence, and the fact that all of this it was people unfit to have kids who had no subsequent, who had, I mean, I don't want to say Daniel was 100% innocent in all of this, but you have to understand is that Daniel never would have asked for any of this, never to have like autism or be bipolar or have schizophrenia. And looking at all of this, I'm not entirely surprised a little bit about how these things sort of turned out. But then again, what does anybody expect? Like, it's devastating, yes, absolutely. It's no excuse, but it's devastating how this turned out. And, well, just, it's... Why, I'm pretty sure people must have had conversations about why was Daniel so angry all the time. But if this ever happened, well, if they ever had talks about this sort of thing, it's unknown to this point, but, well, we might possibly never know the answer to this. The only people who probably might know better would probably be people like Bob, but it would be... There's no real point to asking him about this because I don't think it's fair to drag Bob back into all this. So, with all that being said and done, this was the before era, and actually, to be honest, was this everything in the before era? Let me just do a double check. Oh, wait, no, it isn't. There's still, like, the Adult Chronicles as well, and I didn't even know Daniel was, like, the last to survive of 2 other siblings. That's kind of mad in some strange way. But then there's the what they're calling the Adult Chronicles, which we'll get to after another very short break. So, one moment. Okay, rewind. Daniel Larson's Adult Chronicles. Sounds like a slightly more disturbed version of the video game of Christian Weston Chandler's Adult Chronicles, but, well, yeah, I guess. Also is incomplete or missing content. Probably for the best, because what I know of Daniel Larson, I think, to be honest, sometimes I think it's better not to know some things like these, but what can you do? 2019 would seem to be the year where Daniel would lose 2 of the most important people of his life. On April 11th, 2019, Daniel had to put his, or more accurately, his grandmother's dog, Broadway, down due to her battling cancer. Damn. Had to put her down today. She had cancer. She was my baby. She was in 2 live performances. Can you wish her luck and good times? She was a fighter and would fight through anything. Her name was Broadway. Damn. Even more devastating, on July 24th, 2019, Nancy, Daniel's grandmother, passed away from cancer when Daniel was 21. Before her death, it can be assumed that Daniel was still living with her. On the day she died, Daniel was attending a Special Olympics event before being informed of her death. Instead of seeing her in her last moments at the hospice center, Daniel instead chose to stay at the event to show that he was a fighter. This event is an albeit small showing of how much respect Daniel had for his grandmother, as he could not even be bothered to see her as she died. As after her death, Daniel was sent to a state-run group home program for the disabled. The disability service gave him a job at a thrift store sometime in 2019, where he allegedly had $500 stolen from him via a gift card scam. This incident can be used as an example of Daniel being trolled even before social media. Sometime in 2019, Daniel would start posting to TikTok using the account at Daniels20, which he hardly used. He was also using other social media sites such as Twitter and Instagram. It's unknown where he obtained a phone from, but it is likely that he bought it himself with his income with the thrift store he was working at. His first known Twitter account is at Daniel L263247766, where he posts about his experiences in the Special Olympics, as well as videos of himself hiking. Daniel, opposed to what he'd become later in his life, seemed to be more physically fit, as he was enrolled in the Special Olympics and went out for frequent hikes. Even more, he would frequently post the amount of steps he had attained on his Fitbit. And I think that's mostly about it when we come to the actual adult chronicles. As before, I sort of have to like pretty much scan, and yeah, that's about it. I would say that for some very strange reason, well, a very unceremonious sort of end, I would say, to what would be described as Daniel's early years. But if this is anything to go by, we can sense just how rocky Daniel's first few years were. From violent tendencies to just the fact that he probably felt that he was just sort of alone and confused and didn't really know who to turn to, or nobody could actually give him any answers or anything to actually stop whatever was going through his head. And, well, bear in mind as well, this was just his early years, and bear in mind, considering everything else we have to cover, it's not even as bad as it gets. So, with all that being said and done, I hope all of you guys have enjoyed explaining the first real era of Daniel Larson's life, and I cannot wait to see all of you guys again in the next video. Take care, and bye-bye for now.